Hey guys, what's up? It's been a year of the pandemic, a year of BLM protests, a year of Black squares on Instagram. It's been a year. This particular episode, we not only get to know Rosie and Christina, but also a year of what we've all been through. Reflecting on last year and how traumatizing it was. It really was. Because you had the pandemic, so you had this airborne disease that was affecting your lungs, and the hospitals could not handle you. The capacity was almost at full, and how the states were trying to alleviate the pressure from the healthcare system. So you had to deal with that. You had to deal with wearing a mask, and you had to deal with work. And some offices took that and was like, okay, how can we help you? How can we make this work from home work? Other offices was like, well, I'm not sure. I do want you to come in. And then people got laid off. A lot of people lost their jobs. If you were a Black or brown person, you were dealing with the simple slogan of Black Lives Matter. Is something as simple as, hey, our Black lives do matter. The protest and the politicalness that came from that, you had to deal with that. You had to deal with that trauma also. You were concerned about driving and getting pulled over. You were concerned about walking or jogging or just minding your business, and the harassment became life or death. That was all traumatizing. A year later, you're still dealing with that trauma. You're still taking deep breaths, but not in a panic, a deep breath, and not panting or you know what I mean. You also had to deal with your family. You had to deal with going back to work. And how did your office react to that? Are you comfortable with the way your office reacted to that? And now that we all have the options or have already received the vaccine, going back into work, is it back to normal? Are you back to where you were 2 years ago? Am I the same person as I was back in 2019? Absolutely not. We all want a sense of normalcy, but what does that look like post-trauma? How do you handle that? What does your firm do in response? And how do you feel about that? Some of the little topics that we discussed on this episode with Rosie and Christina. I'm grateful that they came on and we were able to hear two perspectives from co-workers. Yeah, so without further ado, here's the episode. Hi, Rosie. Hi, Christina.
Hello.
Hi.
So I'm going to start with Rosie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rosalie Shen, and I currently work in Boston at an architecture firm. A little bit about me is that I was born in China, and then I was adopted and raised in Andover, Mass, about 30 minutes outside of Boston. From that, I went to university and studied communications and e-business. I've always been into visual storytelling, and that's how I fell into creative marketing. From that, I fell into architecture and design.
How about you, Christina?
I'm from Deerfield Beach, Florida. I'm an Army brat, so I've lived in 10 other places between Florida and here in Massachusetts. I currently stay in Quincy. And mixed, my mom is African American and my dad is German and Swiss. I went to undergrad at Morgan State University and graduate school at the Rhode Island School of Design.
So Rosie, I'm going to jump back to you. Growing up in New England, how was that like for you?
Yeah, as I said, I'm adopted from China. My mom is white, and then my dad is half Asian and half Italian. So and Andover is a very predominantly white space as well. So I think my high school was very white. And then the university I went to, Roger Williams University in Rhode Island, was also very white. That was definitely an influence to my upbringing.
How old were you when you got adopted?
I was about 1.5 years, which is actually a little bit older than most people who are adopted, or some people who are adopted. My sister's adopted as well, and she was about 7 months old.
It was predominantly white, you said, growing up. How was it for you?
I think like this year, I've been able to take a lot of time to think about what it was like kind of like growing up in these white spaces. And my dad is half Asian as well. So I did have that side of his family that came from China too. It almost in a sense that kind of made me feel, obviously I'm not white, but then I think having my dad's side of the family who's partially Asian, I think kind of made me feel in a sense that I wasn't Asian as well. So I think I've been thinking about that a lot lately.
How does that make you feel?
I'm not sure yet. Definitely thinking about it. Yeah, I think this has been a really good year for a lot of people in that sense. Yeah.
How has the stereotypes been for you?
Stereotypes, what? Because I grew up in mainly white spaces in school and high school, I did come across like some of that stuff. But I think in terms of like recently, I actually went to an Stop Asian Hate rally about maybe a month ago. And before I went, I was kind of hesitant for some reason, which now I'm like, why would I be hesitant about that? But I think I was hesitant about it because I thought in a sense that it took away from BLM or all that stuff, or it wasn't as important. Since going to that, I realized how interwoven it was, Stop Asian Hate and BLM. And I think it was good for me to go to that.
I identify as Black, and I don't know how to navigate your space. I could only talk about my personal experiences, but the sensitivity of it, I don't know how to navigate. So forgive me if I say something inappropriate, and please correct me. How did it feel to navigate spaces where you're Chinese, but you have no, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say no history, but no precedence.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. No, I think you're right. I think it was definitely something that I'm still navigating as well. In high school, at least, I never kind of felt like I fit in with the Asian crowd and never really fit in like with the white crowd as well. I think it was feeling like you kind of had legs in both sides, you know what I'm saying? So that's still something I'm navigating and working on. My parents did a really good job of trying to bring the culture to like my sister and I in terms of when we were younger, my mom had us take Chinese lessons and Mandarin and that sort of thing. I didn't stick with it because it was really difficult for me, but they definitely made a really significant effort, which I really appreciated looking back. My Asian American experience is a little bit different than if you're Asian American and your family is also Asian as well. I think that experience has been different, but in a good sense. So essentially, when my parents went to go to China, and they typically go with a larger group of people and other families from the US. And for when they went to go get my sister, they went and with like about 11 other families. And since then, we've all been really close and connected. And every summer we go to Cape and we used to do things throughout the year together. So I think that's been really good as well because they're all adopted from the same place my sister was.
Have you ever had the urge to try to find your birth parent?
Yeah, I think recently I've been thinking about that a little bit, just in terms of kind of like going back to China from where I was from. And just, I think it's so difficult to find your birth parents. I think the percentage chance of that is very low, but I've definitely had kind of like wanting to go back and just go back to China for a few months or something like that.
How about your sister? How's she doing? Like, how are you guys the same in a sense, personality?
We're actually really different, which is funny. She's about 2 years older. And she's really into the sciences and that sort of thing. We're really different growing up, but we get along really well too, which is good. Somehow we're very different, but we're still like close in a sense, even though we have very different interests.
Fast forward college, you mentioned you majored in communications? No.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, communication. Okay. And then you graduated. How did you end up in your current position?
Mm-hmm. That's actually funny. So when I was in school, I studied abroad in Florence. And when I went there, the majority of people I was going with, they were all architects because Florence and architecture kind of go hand in hand. And so I'd be in Florence and be walking down the streets with my friends, and they'd be pointing at all these buildings and all the details and the history. And it was a beautiful city. And I think that kind of made me appreciate architecture and design. So once I started applying to jobs, I also felt like my skills kind of aligned in terms of the Adobe Creative Suite and creative marketing. So that's kind of how I fell into architecture. A lot of my friends happen to be architects.
You saw a job opening for marketing and you applied and you got the job and now you work at an architecture firm.
Mhm.
What's your perception of architects working with us?
Yeah, very, very creative. I think what's interesting is I think you guys have both sides of your brain. So it's very creative, but it's also, very technical too. So I appreciate that. I feel like I'm kind of more on one side, or the majority of people kind of have more one side of their brain. I don't know if that's true, but that's just how I feel.
It sounds great. Yeah, sure. Work both sides. I'm going to jump to Christina now. So you were a military kid hopping across the country. Were you ever overseas?
Yeah, we actually lived in Germany when I was in kindergarten, and it doesn't really count as overseas, but we lived in Hawaii and Alaska as well.
What kind of fond memories do you have of traveling?
Yeah, I have a lot. So my dad got deployed when we were in Hawaii, which is kind of unfortunate for him because like we all had 3 years in Hawaii and he had like two. So when he came back, he wanted to go to the beach every single day and because he missed out. And I always remember us driving down to the beach, and the way that we would go, we had to pass pineapple fields. So smelling the pineapples and then walking along the beach, good. I remember when we were living in Germany, they tried to teach us German, but I forgot all of it. But that was fun. Yeah, mainly remember the people too. Every place I lived, I had a different experience with my schools and the community that I was around. Sometimes we lived on base, and then sometimes we lived off base.
At what point were you interested in architecture?
I didn't really know anything about architecture until I took a career discovery kind of test in high school. I think it was like my junior year, and it said that I would be a good lawyer or surgeon, or no, not lawyer, accountant, surgeon, or architect. And I was like, okay, well, I don't really like blood and accounting sounds boring. So let's try architecture. So I did my research on what it was, and I felt like it really aligned with me. Now that I'm in this field, I feel like there was a lot about my upbringing that kind of guided me towards this. My mom loves to talk about how I would play with Legos, and one of the fond memories I have is in kindergarten, I took all my time with the building blocks and I was making the city. And when the recess was over, I had a breakdown and my mom had to take me from school because it's like I was so into building my little blocks. And also just moving around, I kind of got to know how different spaces would make me feel. Some of the schools were newer, or I remember in middle school, I had this school that was very weird to me. We were broken up into pods, and it was like 6th grade pod, 7th grade pod, and 8th grade pod. And I thought it was so weird that we were divided because I moved to that middle school, I think when I was in 8th grade. And I had come from a school that was more, I guess, in my mind, traditional, where the grades are kind of mixed up a little bit more. And so when I was a 6th grader, I had a chance to be mentored by the 8th graders and vice versa. And when I got into this school where it was all separated, I felt so uncomfortable. And I was as a newcomer, I can't even potentially make new friends because I'm stuck with these people. What if my friend is all the way over there? So now that I'm doing educational design and things like that, I'm realizing that my experiences have kind of nurtured me to kind of be an architect in that way. I feel like that was a very long answer.
It was great. How'd you end up going to Morgan?
So I just kind of applied to a bunch of schools all over the place. And to be honest, I was trying to go to a school that was affordable because we didn't have that much money. So Morgan accepted me and they gave me an honor scholarship. So I was like, yeah, it was almost a free ride for me. And I don't know, that was the main reason that I went. I thought it would be cool to go to a HBCU, but I didn't even really know what all that meant for me until I ended up going. When I applied, I was just, oh yeah, I'm going to college, whatever college is. But when I got there, I'm so happy that I went to Morgan because just from day one of getting on the campus, I felt I was embraced by the family. I made friends so quickly, and it was just a really awesome experience. And the fact that I was able to have professors that looked at me and that really cared about my education. I wasn't doing well, they would let me know. They would be like, hey, Christina, snap out of it. And I'm thinking, I don't know if every college is that. I feel maybe some others kind of just let you lag behind and they're like, oh, that's a personal problem.
And then you went to RISD?
Yes.
In comparison?
Yeah. I think RISD was still very nurturing because it's a smaller school. Like, I feel like I definitely got a chance to have a more personal interaction with my professors, but I feel getting onto campus, even though everybody was excited to be there, we're all new and stuff, I was definitely the only Black American in my graduate class. I was actually the only Black American in the program that I was in. And then like for the graduate STEM students that were coming in, they're like two different programs. And out of that program, I was still the only Black American because there were two like African people. So it was like, even though there were three Black people, it was like for Black American people, it was like we're missing. I definitely miss the HBCU culture, but at the same time, because I'm a military brat and I've gone from predominantly Black spaces to predominantly white spaces, I kind of felt like I was also in a familiar place, even though I think Morgan's culture was definitely more embracing.
In terms of environment, Providence is quite the opposite of Baltimore. How did you navigate through that? And it seems like you're the expert in navigating in different spaces at this point. Looking back and comparing those two spaces, just in general, what did you notice?
Yeah, for me, Providence was more of a college town. Like, I didn't really branch out as much, but I feel like I really got a good sense of Baltimore. And yeah, like I went to a HBCU, so when I was on campus, I was surrounded by people of color, but also Baltimore as a whole is almost a predominantly Black city. The culture outside of campus, if we go to Shake and Bake, it was an extension of the HBCU, but I guess the same is true for Providence, except for the fact that Providence is kind of an extension of Brown and RISD. So it's like, I don't know, but that's just my experience. Like, I went there for grad school, so it was only 2 years. So my memories of Providence are basically eating.
Little thing about me. So I went to Wentworth and I frequent Providence a lot. I had a roommate. She grew up in Providence. So I would spend a lot of time in Providence. I loved Providence. Like it had this small town feel and it was by the water and like, I loved it. I'm from the DMV area and I've always like surrounded myself in Baltimore, but not actually lived in Baltimore. I know where Morgan State is and everything, so I'm familiar with the campus. And when I compare it, here's an example. So everything shuts down, and this is Boston too, but everything shuts down at like 1:00, like 1:30. And I'm like, it's a college town. Why are you shutting everything down at 1:30? I was not used to that. And I graduated in 2005. So, it's a couple of years compared to yours. And I don't know if this is the same, but I felt like I can get away with more stuff in Providence than I could in Baltimore. For example, when we would go to like the club or something, I'm so used to getting like molested before I get into the door. So, I had to take off my shoes, to go through the metal detector. And in Providence, I just walked right in. I was like, what? You're not going to check for weapons? Like it was really weird for me. I don't know if you've experienced anything similar or.
No, I have definitely experienced a similar adjustment. And I didn't even like think about it until you brought up your stories, because I definitely remember like feeling safer getting drunk in Providence.
Yes.
When I was in Baltimore, I would, limit myself and I would not go to parties if there was no male friend with us. Or like if we were only girls, we would be in a large pack. But in Providence, I could go out with one girlfriend and like I would even feel comfortable like walking home with her and it's just the two of us and I would feel totally safe.
What made you go to RISD? What made you go to graduate school?
I knew I wanted to go to graduate school. Well, partly because Morgan does not have a 5-year professional degree. Like they have a program that's called like the 4+2. So you could do 4 years at Morgan and 2 years 4 years undergrad and then 2 years in grad. So that was another reason that I was attracted to Morgan's program, because I was like, oh, I could get an undergraduate degree and a graduate degree in 6 years. And I didn't realize at that point that like you could do a 5-year and a 1 year. I just thought that, oh, 6 years, that's like efficient. But by the time I was junior, I realized that like Morgan's 2-year graduate program was not really what I wanted to gain. Like, I think at that point, I had kind of found myself as a designer, and I realized like that I needed to learn. I felt like I needed a more creative space. Like I had ended up doing art installations at Morgan. We did design build courses. I like ended up doing an independent study in furniture design. So it's like I was doing things that Morgan was not like offering on a more institutional level at that time. Like I had to like make up my own course, you know? So when I was looking at grad schools, I really want something that's more interdisciplinary in terms of creative design. And so I applied to a lot of art schools, but RISD was a good fit for me because even though I wanted to be in an art space and do something that was really creative and just really try my hands at all of these different types of design, I still kind of recognize that I'm a nerd and I'm very, I don't know, just kind of conservative realizing. And RISD was they're a very serious art school. Some of the other art schools that I applied to, they were a little too, I don't want to say wild, but RISD was very academic. They were very much about pedagogy and stuff like that. So I was attracted to their seriousness, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I knew this before I applied, but I was open to the idea of teaching. And I think RISD really prepares their graduate students to become professors in the way that they teach us. So there's kind of like more opportunity there for me to just do more of what I was interested in.
Have you traveled abroad for architecture?
Yes. So I went to Rome for a winter session at RISD for 6 weeks. And on that trip, we went to Florence for a day and Venice for a day. And then I took another course where we went to Mexico City and Monterrey in Mexico for Thanksgiving break, which was a week.
Oh, nice. What year did you graduate from RISD?
2018.
Okay, you graduated and I need a job to pay off these loans. How did that job search go?
I feel like it wasn't as bad as some other people in my cohort. Like I definitely applied to jobs during thesis, which everybody was saying that you shouldn't do. But I was like, I need a place to live after this. So keep your opinions to yourself. So yeah, so I thought that I had interned at a firm in Baltimore for 2 summers in a row. So I was kind of like, oh yeah, I'm in there. But they just didn't have an opening. So I kind of like frantically put out applications. At that point, I was a lot more picky about what I wanted. So I think I didn't just apply to everywhere. I looked at all the places that were hiring and do I actually want to work here? And then I'd apply. So I only applied to one place in Boston for that reason. I didn't really want to live in Boston, but when I found Flansburgh, there's no way I can't apply to this firm. I remember though having phone interviews and it would be kind of awkward because my thesis was about African-American architecture. And at first I wanted to do it on like mixed architecture, but because I'm half German, it's like there's already enough research about German architecture. Like I'm probably a pro at it at this point. So I focused it on African-American architecture. I remember like being on a phone interview with this firm. And I feel like as soon as I started talking about my thesis, it was like, okay, well, thank you.
Oh no.
So that was like awkward. So I was like nervous when I went in for my interview with Flansburgh. They were on top of it. I applied and maybe like a week or two later, I got an interview and then they let me know a week that I got the job. I love the efficiency.
They actually got their stuff together. So
yeah. I was like, I don't play. But I remember I was sitting at the interview with my portfolio because I brought a physical portfolio. When we got to talk about my thesis, I was a little nervous because of what happened on the phone interview. I was like, is this going to be like an awkward moment? But the principal seemed like so excited about everything that I had to say. So, and I got the job. So I was really happy. I was like, oh my goodness, like, I don't know, because I didn't think that my thesis would stop me from getting a job, you know?
Yeah, but no, it's, that's interesting. Offline, yeah, you landed this awesome job. And this was your first architecture job, correct?
Yes.
Oh,
My
wow.
first real job.
Wow. How was your experience like so far? I know it's just peaches and cream, right? Like,
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I do love working here. I just keep thinking that I have a lot of opportunity to grow here. And sometimes there's a class at RISD called Professional Practice, and they'll invite RISD people to go and talk, and they'll ask, oh, are you thinking about moving firms or whatever? And I always say, I'm not growing here anymore, then I'll dip. I feel like every year I can tell I've learned a lot. So I think that's the most important thing for me. And also the work culture in terms of working overtime and stuff, that it's not, they understand we have a life outside of architecture, which I really appreciate, because I definitely did not want to work for a firm that was expecting you to pull all-nighters every day of the week.
did you have any concerns or reservations or even fears about architecture firms? You mentioned the long hours, and was there any other concerns you had prior to you getting a job?
I don't think so. I feel like the hours were really important to me, and also the pay, because we live in Boston, or like near Boston. It's extremely expensive. So, and I know that our profession in general is kind of underpaid compared to other licensed professionals.
This is for both Christina and Rosie. Did you have concerns about being a female in your profession?
I didn't really understand why it was such a big deal that women became architects, because to me it seemed like a normal thing that women should do. We can be creative, we can draw, we can be technical. I don't understand why there's like this kind of stigma that this is a man's field. I mean, I know it's historically a man's field, but I was really confused as to why it was such a big deal that women in architecture were being excluded. But that is another reason I was attracted to Flansburgh, because we do have a female principal. And when I saw her, I felt even more comfortable accepting the offer, because I'm like, well, this firm gets it, that there's no reason why women should not be architects. I've been going on to the construction site for, I feel like it's almost been a year now, maybe half a year, that I've been going almost every week. And at first I was the only woman in the room, but I don't know, for some reason I wasn't too terribly uncomfortable by that. There was one awkward moment where one of the construction workers tried to get my number, but I don't know, it wasn't super worrisome.
I've always been aware of being a woman in a room, even before I was working in a professional capacity. And I don't know if you would stack layers. Are you the Black person first? Are you the woman first? How do others perceive you as? What would be the first negative? The fact that you're a woman, or the fact that you're a person of color? That's what biases pop up first.
Yeah. And also the fact that I'm so young. I'm also
age too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and not just at the construction site, but when I first started working at Flansburgh, I was like maybe one of 3 younger people. And I was just like, hey, fresh out of school.
Right. I have energy. Yes. Let's do something. How about you, Rosie? I know that this is purely observation wise, that marketers tend to be more women than men. Is that?
Yeah, I think one thing that, because I didn't have that architecture background, when I entered the field, I realized how male dominated it was. It was kind of like a new space for me. So I didn't think about it before I kind of entered it. And, I'd go to these pitches and interviews and things like that. And I'd realize the people who are pitching, they're mostly male, they're mostly white males. There are not a ton of females in terms of leadership roles. And then there are close to no people of color in these rooms. And I think we talked about this a little bit, but even down to like the renderings I saw in these meetings, little children were mostly white as well. So I think that was very shocking for me, I guess, to realize how white, I guess it is, and male dominated it is. And I think you're right. I think marketing, I actually am part of like SMPS. And so I went to a few meetings with that, and I realized how female dominated it is too. So it was kind of like architecture, or to me, seemed very male dominated. And then I go to SMPS, which was extremely female dominated. So that was interesting. I like didn't think about that before I entered the field.
That's, that's a good point too, because it's usually principals that are leading the charge when it comes to proposals and the interviews that you get after being shortlisted. Within the past 2 years, how polarizing and emotional it has been, both for the pandemic and for the Black Lives Matter movement. I'm going to start off with the pandemic. And this is both for you and Rosie, how did your office handle the pandemic?
We handled it pretty well. I think there was a little awkwardness at first because on the last day of work, my principal made an announcement and sent out we should work from home from this point on. I think the good part is that we already had the ability to work from home because we do international projects. At some point before I got there, the firm realized that giving everybody laptops and making it easier to work from home would just make their lives easier in terms of those who do travel for work. So instead of getting 2 separate systems for everybody. So it just kind of worked out for this situation, which was really good. Later on, we realized that not everybody has the same internet access, and that's slowing down our work. So our firm actually pays for our internet now, which I think is really awesome. The awkwardness though was at first, we were all working from home and not really talking to each other. Only the people that you worked immediately with, you had communication with. At some points I was like, do I still work here? Like I'm doing work, but do I still work here? Yeah. Later on, then we started having these all office meetings, which sometimes we don't really have any new news to share, but I really do still appreciate them because it makes me feel like, hey, we're all in this together.
Yeah, especially me out here in marketing. It's like kind of like the architects, and then I'm over here. So those meetings are nice. A little bit awkward too, but they're nice.
Did you guys have happy hours or anything like that, or try to arrange some type of, I don't know, community via Zoom?
Yeah, we did that for a while on Fridays, but I think everyone's schedule got really busy, but we should definitely bring those back for sure. Especially like we have a few new employees too, so
Yeah,
gotta bring that back.
Yeah, we should. And we have a book club too. So we've tried to find ways to bring people together.
In terms of BLM, and either you can answer this, how did your firm react to that?
When that was happening, we were all really emotionally affected by that and really tired and feeling really drained. So we did have a group conversation where we were able to share everything that was going through our heads and the emotional fatigue that we're all feeling. It was hard in the beginning just because like you can't really turn your out of work life emotions off and then go to your 9 to 5. You can't just turn that off. So that was something that we were working on.
Yeah. And I really appreciated the conversation that we had to kind of just talk about everything that we were feeling and build a community as a firm, not ignoring the fact that for some of us, it seems the world is falling apart. After that conversation was opened up, I actually emailed one of our principals and let that person know, I really feel like we should be doing more. I don't know what it is, but just letting them know, especially since other firms were posting, oh, we're in solidarity with Black Lives, and our firm didn't say anything. And I was confused. Is it that we don't know that that is a social media movement, or trying to get more in touch with, okay, this is all happening around us, we should do something. Even though at the time, I don't feel like I knew what it was we should do. I just wanted them to know we should do something. And actually, after all of that, our conversation, that our firm ended up becoming a NOMA member, like a firm member, and donating to Project Pipeline. So I think it was good that we had those conversations because it wasn't just me that said we should do something. It was also other people in the conversation saying we would like, if as a firm, we could not just say that we support, but do something.
Mm-hmm. I think being completely honest, I think in the beginning, could have handled it slightly differently. But one thing is the principals are all very open and very willing to support us. I had some conversation with principals as well, and they were all very supportive of that. But I think in the beginning, it was something that we could improve on for sure.
Did any of you feel burdened by it or emotionally drained, or all eyes were on you? And I mean, this is not only just BLM, but you know, with the Stop Asian Hate too, were people looking at you too?
For me, because I'm involved with hiring and marketing, that I wanted to take it on, I guess, in a sense. And we had a lot of support from the principals, and we were able to kind of pursue what we wanted to pursue. But I think that no one was thinking about these things, but I did feel like someone had to start thinking about it in a sense.
Yeah, I definitely felt emotionally burdened, but in a similar sense, I was making myself emotionally burdened. I was taking all of this stuff on, not because anybody asked me to, but because I needed to. When George Floyd was murdered, I just felt so defeated because I was doing things to help Black people advance in architecture in the small ways that I was, but I felt like it's not good enough anymore. I was not only trying to come up with things that we could do here at Flansburgh, but I was also trying to come up with things that RISD could do, because I ended up getting in touch with students or Black students at the RISD, and, you know, trying to come up with creative ways to fix their program, not fix it, but make it more accepting or embracing of the Black students that they do accept. And I didn't feel like all eyes were on me at the firm. Some people would reach out to me and then some people wouldn't, but I didn't think anything of it either way, because those who reached out care, and then those who don't reach out, I feel like they know that it's kind of awkward just having to talk about it all the time. I kind of also appreciate those who didn't say anything equally as much. But yeah, I never mentioned this yet in the interview, but I teach a pre-college course at RISD over the summers. And during the first protest, I was also planning that course, and I just felt so much pressure, like, oh, I need more Black voices. This course needs to be revolutionary. And it's an introductory to architecture, so it's kind of hard. It's my obligation. First of all, I do like doing stuff like that. And well, part of my awkwardness when I first started was because when I got here, even though I appreciated the work-life balance, I had also made my entire life architecture for 6 years. So I didn't have a life. And then I got here and I'm like, everybody else has a life. I need to get a life. So
And that same problem too.
I mean, it's a real problem. So that's why, like, I ended up working so much with the BSA, because this will give me something to do, but also it's something that I care about. It's something that I like to do. And also I do feel like as an underrepresented group in architecture, it's really important that I show up, because if 2% or 0.02% of architects are Black, and then we don't show up to anything, that's also discouraging for those who are coming out of school, or even high schoolers that are interested. We're such a small percentage that if we don't show up in certain spaces, then we won't get seen, or the people who need us won't be able to just talk to us, basically. I'm not trying to pressure all of the Black women or brown women to do more than you feel able to, but that was just my kind of thinking about it. In any way that I can help and that I have the energy, I should definitely do something.
And for the audience, BSA is Boston Society of Architects, and it's the local AIA chapter, except it's not called the AIA Boston, it's BSA. Because of who you are, and not only as a person, but because you're a Black woman, that you have this responsibility to lift people up and to introduce your field and to multiply those numbers, increase those numbers. And it's a weird thing to feel, because I, of course, feel the same way. It's been fluctuating over the years, and I've experienced burnt out because of it. So I guess my cautionary tale to you, Christina, is don't get burnt out. And especially now that family, right, is now presented to you and is on the table, your perspective will change. So as this old head would caution you or tell you or whatever. Just be careful. Are you also part of NOMA there too? Or yeah.
Yeah, so I am a member of NOMA, although I'm not like as active in NOMA as I am in the other BSA. We call them knowledge communities, but they're basically committees. Yeah, just because I was presented with the opportunity to be in leadership of one of the knowledge communities. So although I am still a member of NOMA and would be more than willing to volunteer if there are things that they need hands on deck for, I was presented with the opportunity to be a co-chair of the Emerging Professionals Committee for the BSA. So I'm definitely more involved in that. Before the pandemic shut down, I used to volunteer almost every Saturday, once a month. I don't even remember what they call it anymore. It's been such a long time since I've done it, but there was like children's kind of day where we would teach them about architecture and it would like be themed. So one day we talk about bridges, one day we talk about towers. And so I would like always come out and help set up and help the kids and stuff like that. And then, as I mentioned, I teach a pre-college course. So my first summer at the firm, I went down to RISD twice a week to teach that, which, you know, another shout out to Flansburgh for being flexible with my hours. But since the pandemic, I've been doing that remotely too. So yeah, I think those are my extracurriculars.
How about non-architecture? What are you into?
Non-architecture. Before the pandemic, I used to travel a lot, but now that everything's shut down, I basically just like to eat and drink and watch the Real Wives of Atlanta. I used to do puzzles, but now my brain's so fried. I can't do puzzles anymore. Sad, but yeah, I think that's it.
I'm on the Netflix and chill. Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
Netflix or Real Housewives and chill. Yeah.
Yes, and I even got my fiance into it, which my family thinks is hilarious.
Is he from the Boston area?
No, he's actually Nigerian. So he ended up in Boston because he went to grad school at Northeastern.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Rosie, tell me a little bit about Flansburgh.
Yeah, I've been at Flansburgh about 2 years now. Time flies by. And it's been a really good experience for me. I think, you know, I'm the only person in marketing. So I think I'm able to wear a lot of hats and kind of choose like some of the work that I do. So I think that's been really nice.
How many people are there? And what type of work do you guys do?
So we do educational schools, K through 12 architecture. And yeah, it's about 24 people.
Okay.
Small firm, small yet. I guess like one reason that we're interested in this podcast is that we're hiring right now. So I think mentioning that if anyone out there listening is interested in submitting their application, then we'd love to view it.
In the show notes, I'll provide a link for you to apply, and you can say that you listen to this podcast and let me know that I've helped in any way. And you guys also have a scholarship.
Yeah, me and Rosie are in the process of creating a scholarship for 2 Black students to attend the RISD pre-college program. So we're still like in the development phase of that. But yeah, because like the pre-college program is for high school students to get introduced to architecture. So we thought it would be a great idea if like we could raise funds for people who normally don't come to these programs to like get the experience and exposure and like just figure out if you like it. Like for me, when I do all of these volunteer things, I'm like, I don't really care if you decide to be an architect. I want you to be able to make the choice for yourself, like for you to have the opportunity to say no. So yeah, just giving students the opportunity to come see what it's about and not have to worry about the cost. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is this for local residents or?
I don't think we've decided that far.
Yeah, I don't think I think hopefully this is like a summer of 2022 type thing, but I think it so aligns well with what we do too. It's like we do K through 12 educational facilities, and this is for high school students. And I think since being in architecture now and not having been like previously exposed to it, I guess I did realize like how much of a barrier there is in terms of access. I think like if you were to ask me like about being an architect in high school and college and like studying it, it would have been like, it's like an astronaut or something. I think it was just so like it just never even crossed my mind. So I think providing, I guess, opportunity to people who might not have been previously exposed to it is kind of like is really exciting for us. And architecture is also, I learned, very expensive. Like when I was in school, all my friends had to pay for supplies, and they also had to do their masters too, which marketing, you don't really have to do extra schooling unless you choose to. So I think giving people the opportunity to pursue it if they're interested in it and excited about it potentially is like exciting.
Let me know. That's something that I'm deeply like passionate about as well, because there was an architecture program that I was introduced at Howard University. Because of that program, this is why I'm here. So if there's anything I can do, please let me know. If you need any resources, if you need any connections, anything at all, I'll even donate $5. Like just anything, please let me know. And I'll bug you too. I'll check in like a couple of months from now and see. One last question. I didn't really dive into this and I really want to. So just bear with me. Rosie, how does one person get into marketing? Do you need communications?
Yeah, in school, I studied communications, and it was kind of a combination of Adobe Creative Suite, business. I kind of just fell into creative marketing because I've always been really interested into visual storytelling, and that also aligns with my interest in design as well. So I kind of just fell into it.
Are there any tips or tricks in architectural marketing you picked up or learned along the way?
In terms of proposals, that is mainly telling a story and selling yourself. That's a main tip I've picked up, I guess, I would say.
So is telling the story of the firm, telling the story of the project, or kind of both? Or is it
kind of both?
Okay.
Yeah, telling the story of the town, of the students who might be in the building, of our firm.
And Adobe is the way to go.
For me, at least at our company, I'm in the Adobe suite every day. So also a lot of marketing strategy, digital marketing, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. What about the social media portion of it? Have you noticed anything change or shifted, or when you look at other architecture firms, do you see a trend?
Yeah, I think each firm takes like a different approach. I've seen firms that are more about, showcasing the people at the firm and the culture of the firm. I think our firm takes an approach of having, everything that we post kind of be like a magazine of our work and the body of our work. It really depends on what the principals are aiming towards.
Are the principals aware of the current trends? Do you have to educate them? Have you dealt with that? Any challenges or any?
Yeah, I think like in the nicest way. I think they're definitely more architecture focused, which is great. So I do the social media, and it's actually funny. We did have a conversation. I was presenting the annual marketing review, and we had a conversation about TikTok, which just made me laugh a lot. And they're like, "What's happening on TikTok? Like, what is that?" Which was funny. But yeah, I'm kind of like the main driver of our social media and kind of just trying to let them know of what's happening on social media, I guess I would say.
And you tell them no on TikTok, correct?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, okay, good. I can't.
Or I think I think I just didn't say anything. I was just nodding.
So for any of you principals that are listening right now, do not go on TikTok, okay? TikTok is not for architecture firms at all. Do not do that.
But there is like the design talk side of like TikTok, you know what I mean? Which is like fun.
Yeah. No, don't go on TikTok. I would not. I would not. Because the great thing about TikTok is its authenticity, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have individuals who are telling a story. And when you see other advertisers like Arby's or McDonald's, and you just you can't flick the screen fast enough to get
exactly
that. And that's what you don't want. You want people to stay there for more than a second to engage and to have a conversation because of the way architects are and how controlling we are. The dialogue on there, it's like, I have a TikTok account, but I do not post. And I've had this conversation with other podcasters about TikTok, and it works for some, but I like to protect my mental state, and I know I would get trolls. I would definitely get trolls. And I don't think I can handle that, or to deal with somebody who don't like what you said and they report you. Like I don't want to deal with all that.
Yeah, I mean, the comment section of TikTok, they're like kind of brutal, but they're also very funny and very witty too. And I think another like one interesting thing about Gen Z is they're such creators. They're just natural creators because of TikTok, because of all social media. I think they're just natural born creators. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely.
But you're right. I think if you're on TikTok as a company, then you have to be like very authentic. I know actually some companies have really funny TikToks, but the majority of them, I swipe really quick.
Because it's an advertisement and you're like, no,
Yeah.
I need to learn something. Like TikTok University is real. And you have to really, that's the only way you can engage. You guys, Flansburgh is on Instagram and are you on Twitter as well?
And YouTube and yeah.
You have a YouTube channel?
Yeah, we actually just started that about maybe last year.
What's on the YouTube channel?
So we just have our films uploaded on the YouTube channel.
Ah.
But we're going to try to populate it more this year. I think I'd love to see more webinars and just more almost behind the scenes of the people that work at the firm.
That's a great idea. I wish more firms would get on that. Oh my goodness. You know what, Rosie? I can actually talk to you a long time about this, about just architects, and just us marketing, and how I feel we are so behind on the current trend. And it's interesting. This is me, right? We can both talk about this if you choose to. The fact that architects are innovators. We are looking to design the next thing, to win all those awards, to get some recognition and fame, to get the client the pricing, the leasing, the like whatever value that they paid for us to do. Just some funky artistic design, but we are so behind on everything else, especially with marketing ourselves the way our client markets themselves, or the way just anybody else in general. I just feel like we're so creative and we call ourselves artists, but we don't use innovation to tell the masses how artistic we are. Does that make sense?
Definitely.
So if you had a magic wand, Rosie, what would you like to see firms do?
Oh, that's a good question. I think more media initiatives. Definitely. Podcasts are so popular, trying to get into more of what everyone's listening to and that sort of thing. I don't know yet.
You know what?
Been thinking about it.
You know, I've noticed too, is that firms are doing their own podcasting.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of architecture podcasts. Yeah.
And I mean, great. like firm base, not just individuals, because you know, there's some that have that one employee that has their own, something like me.
I totally agree too. Having media out there, kind of what I would like to see is architecture speaking kind of to the common person versus to clients and other architects. So that's kind of what I'm trying to tackle this year, having everything that goes out our door in terms of media kind of be for the people who aren't architects and the people who aren't clients, I guess, adding value if it's like an informational article or something like that, but adding value to the everyday person and speaking in that manner versus speaking the architecture language too. And I also am interested in kind of seeing architecture firms run like tech companies, market advertising agencies, and then design like architects, of course. Pulling from different types of companies and different ways that companies run could be interesting too.
What do you think is the hesitation?
I think, from at least what I see, and this might be incorrect, but I think maybe some architects are worried about their clients or their clients' perceptions of them. So maybe they're a little bit hesitant to put out what they're really feeling and thinking in that worry. Authenticity is really only beneficial to the company, and kind of like showing the people behind the work and making the people behind the work real is really important, I think.
You're absolutely correct. Like it is the fear of losing money, the fear of losing the client because you take a stance or something, or because it's a lot of pressure. Like you're feeding families and you have to look at the numbers, and if this client leaves, you got to shut down your entire firm. So yeah, it is a real fear. You're absolutely right. Okay, I've kept you guys way too long. I apologize for that. Any last words? Anything else? Am I missing anything?
I think the last thing that I have to say, at least, is we're hiring. We'd love to see anyone who's listening to this apply to Flansburgh. It's a great company. I've been here for 2 years and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. People are really nice, definitely a really good work-life balance. You get to work on some really cool projects. I know one of the reasons I applied is I saw the website, and the buildings are, I mean, I don't have a background in architecture, but I personally think they're beautiful and they're not overly designed either. So I think that's what kind of like drew me to the company. I felt like they're stunning, but they really fit into the environment. It's just great working with a lot of good people.
What positions are open right now?
We're hiring for all levels right now. So whether you're getting out of school or you have like 10 years of experience, definitely apply. We're a Boston-based firm, but we do have some people who work remotely.
Okay. Again, if you're interested, it'll be in my show notes. Okay. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you for having us. This was fun.
Okay. All right, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, listeners. I have an exciting announcement. I decided to launch a membership program for the show, where you have a chance to support me and the show directly. I love creating the show, and it means the world to me that you all tune in to keep hearing me week after week. But it takes an immense amount of time and energy to produce. I want to keep the show going, and I want to invest in its growth. And I also want you to become a partner with me in this journey. That's why I'm excited to give you a chance to officially become a supporter of the show at glow.fm/archispolly, ARCHISPOLLY, or by clicking the link in the show notes. It's quick and easy. It takes less than 30 seconds and just takes clicking a link in the show notes and using Apple or Google Pay. You don't have to create any new logins, and you can contribute as much or as little as you like. If this show is part of your day or week, and you like what I'm doing, then visit glow.fm/archispolly, all one word, and support me and the show in any way you can today.